Amen. Anybody here remember the movie a few years ago starring Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson called Bucket List? Oh, yeah, you were already answering it before I said it. Raise your hand. Let me see. Anybody remember that? It was an interesting movie. It was very enjoyable, and I thought it was thoughtful, very thoughtful. For those of you not familiar with it, it was about two individuals who would never have been friends under normal circumstances, but both were diagnosed with a terminal illness and found themselves in a hospital side by side in the same room. And the outcome of their encounter was a mutual commitment to one another to do everything they could and had wanted to do, but had not gotten around to doing their whole life. Hence the title, Bucket List. I like that because I have a bucket list. Do you have a bucket list? Raise your hand. You got a bucket list? Everybody got a bucket list? Come on, you got a bucket list. I don't believe that only a few of you have it. Most of us have a bucket list. That is those things that we want to get done before our time on earth is over. Perhaps on your bucket list is a time to retire. For those of you not retired, maybe it's a time to retire and to relax and to not worry about anybody except me, to get out of the rat race and relax, to play a round of golf every day. That's my goal, to play. We don't need this anymore. To play a round of golf every day. That's on my list. To get that boat and sail up and down the Gulf Coast. That's on my list. Maybe to get new fishing gear and to become the best fisherman that is out there. That's on my list. To travel around the world. That's on my list. Is it not? Maybe it's on yours as well. To get that condo on the shores of Omaha. That would be an important thing to do. To take scuba lessons and learn what's under the water. Yeah, the day will come for that. Anyway, that's on my list, maybe yours. To get that car I always dreamed of and couldn't afford when I was 15. To do a exotic trip somewhere in the mountains or the wilds of Canada. And maybe to jump out of that perfectly good airplane. I dream of that time when you have the health, the well-being, the freedom to do all those things you really wanted to do that were fantasized in your mind that you have put off for years. It's going to be great. And I want to say there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with this bucket list. I truly believe, that God wants us to have a good and full and satisfying existence. There's just one catch. There's just one thing about this bucket and the list that it contains. It's pretty much about me. It's my, get it? It's my bucket list. It's about my personal satisfaction, my gratification, my fulfillment, my reaping of the fruits of my efforts, my labors, my dreams, because I've earned it. And I don't disagree. I think you're entitled to the fruits of your labors. It's just that there's something wrong with this picture. There's something missing in this picture. There is an imbalance in this existence if that's all we see. There is an imbalance. Because I don't think we were created just for ourselves. I think we were created to live a full life, but to use fully all that was shared fully with us. To use it fully, not just for my life, but to add beauty and to add texture to all of life. Think about it. Fruit trees. Fruit trees receive from life, they give back to life. Flowers receive from life, they give back to life. Birds receive from life, and they sing back to life. It's a part of our Genesis DNA. And it doesn't matter how old we are or what our status in life is. You know, it's not just about that bucket. There is another bucket. There is this other bucket. Not, that one's about what we get and what we want. This one is about what we do with what we've received and how it is shared. This one is God's bucket in our life. You know, it's interesting. All of us got 2 hands and 2 arms, right? We got 2 hands and 2 arms. If I want to carry this bucket, I got to use it all, don't I? I got to use it all, because if I don't, it's going to fall out. Something will break. It'll get lost. Somebody might steal it. Don't touch it. Somebody might steal it if I turn my back on it. But if I maintain this one and this one, is it not easier to carry 2 buckets in balance than it is to try to carry one that's a load? You see, it requires my whole body, not just my hand or my arms, to carry that one. But when I balance them out and keep them together, my equilibrium in my existence is so much better. The truth is, though, however, we don't talk much and we don't spend much thought on this bucket. This bucket we just kind of let get filled whenever it happens, and we go on. But the world focuses a ton on this basket. All you got to do is watch the ads for Del Webb. They'll tell you where the good life is. All you got to do is call up TD Waterhouse. They'll protect it. And then again, if you want to get away from it all, there is Norwegian Cruise. This bucket gets filled, and society knows how to do that. But not so much the other bucket. Because this bucket is motivated by gratitude, which provides a different kind of fulfillment and purpose. And so what happens in life when we focus on one and not the other is we live in an imbalanced fashion, and then we become fearful. We become fearful. We have anxiety. We become spiritually weary. And I think our internal barometer, I think we have a barometer that tells us when we have more than we need. And then we begin to feel guilty, and that weighs us down as well. You know, we can't even wait anymore to get through Thanksgiving to rush out and buy cheap gifts for somebody else. I mean, think about it. We want to get the best bargain we can so we can give the best gift to somebody else for the least amount of money. It is ironic, is it not? Following the death of my mother and my father, my brothers and I were required to go through their belongings, their will and their estate. We all know what that is like. Which really wasn't very much. 40 years in parish ministry had given them all they needed to live happily, but not necessarily abundantly. They didn't have much to pass on. Which could lead one to conclude that they didn't have a very satisfying or fulfilling life. You know, we would encourage them to do more and to go, and that just wasn't where they saw the value in their existence. And they would disagree if we said they did not have a happy or fulfilled or satisfying life. And the proof of that, I think, came when we went through their belongings, and what we found and fascinated us was a book that recorded all the baptisms and all the weddings and all the funerals and all the member joinings that my dad performed over the years. People's lives. Their children, their grandchildren, their families, the ministry of the church. And one of the gifts I treasure most in that is this old record book that I still use for baptisms and weddings and funerals that was my father's and has some of his notes in it as well. The house they lived in, somebody else has. The car they drove, a Delta 88 1982 diesel, my dad thought was the best car in the world, is probably in a junk heap somewhere. The golf clubs he last owned probably aren't even worthy of a flea market. And yet, these things, what lives on these pages, the lives of people, are invaluable. And their buckets, both of them, they would say, were full. In the book, Built for Greatness, the author talks about a funeral service of two individuals. One was Walt Disney, and the other, his name eludes me, I'm sorry, but he was one of the original founders of MGM, the movie studios. And when both died, the story is that Hollywood, the church in which the funerals were held, were packed, overflowing, abundant with people. And of course, people at Walt Disney's funeral were very sad because they had lost someone they thought was a great contributor to life, had brought joy and happiness to their families and to society at large. And they were very sad at his departure. Thousands of people. The CEO of MGM had thousands of people there, but someone said there were thousands of people there not because they mourned him, but because they wanted to make sure he was dead. You see, there are things greater than us, of value more eternal than us, that bring balance to life. 2 buckets, not one. Today we begin the church season of Advent, and it is a season and a time centered on waiting. We don't like waiting in our culture. In fact, everything is built to avoid it. In the Old Testament, they're waiting for the coming of the Messiah, the story of salvation, to break into the world, some relief and rescue from all that they see going on wrong. We wait for Christmas, Christ's birthday, the in-between time, Christ's return. Our culture doesn't like waiting. We can't even wait for Thanksgiving to end so we can rush out and buy all those gifts, and if we have to kill somebody to get them. We don't like to wait because in our society, we define waiting as something passive and inert. We define waiting as a waste of time. But the biblical definition of waiting is a time of searching and seeking in our souls. It is waiting upon the Lord. Those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. Those who wait upon the Lord and discern and discover who they are, what they are about, what is their purpose, where is their calling, what is to be in their buckets. They will mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not grow weary. They shall walk and shall not faint. It is a time of discernment, this season of Advent, to look at the buckets. And if they are disproportionate, figure out what we're going to do. Perhaps doing is found in writing a note to that friend or neighbor. Maybe it's doing something for someone who is sick or homeless. Perhaps it is setting aside a portion of your estate, your will for a church or a charity, giving it thought and time to what the good Lord has done for you. Maybe it's about making a sacrificial gift of time and talent, not because you have to or you must, or you feel guilty about it, but because it just seems like the right thing to do. You know, a lot of churches these days, and our mission committee actually followed up with it, but a lot of churches, a lot of mega churches, a lot of churches are saying, they're challenging people. People say, well, they're tired of the commercialism, they're tired of all that, and churches are saying, well, why don't you give to charity what you buy in gifts? Wow, there's a shocker, huh? Or why don't you do something charitable instead of extravagant, over-the-top gifts? And of course, the mission committee gave some opportunities in this pamphlet you received if you would choose to do so. You see, the truth is, we spend a lot of time on that bucket. And the text asked me to think about it. Because if my life ended today, I would have to say I've been blessed. I have been blessed more than I ever expected to be. Honest to goodness, I've gotten more out of life than I ever dreamed possible. My bucket, that bucket is full. Are there things I'd still like to put in it? Without a doubt. But it's not just about this bucket, it's about this one as well. So what I want to encourage you and even challenge you to do over these next 3 or 4 weeks of Advent, is time of waiting, is to use it creatively, to use it productively, to use it in a fashion that discerns what you can do in life. to think about not one bucket, but 2 bucket lists. Lists that bring you joy in multiple ways. Ways that are about love of self, but also love of God. And what I assure you is that if you do this, you will find a new equilibrium and joy in life. You will find a balance in your existence that has been missing to this point. You will discover some great gifts during Advent. Peace, satisfaction, and wholeness of your soul. And friends, these are the greatest gifts of all. Amen. We will